The council chamber floated in silence, suspended above the crystalline cities of Velia Prime. Through the transparent floor, council member Thelvan watched his people move through the streets below, their translucent bodies shimmering in the soft light of their dying world. They had no idea how close the end was. "The Kreth ships will reach orbital position in 72 hours, announced High Chancellor Mirseth, her voice carrying the harmonic resonance unique to their silicon-based physiology. "Our defense satellites have failed. Our allies have not responded to our calls. We are alone." Thelvan felt the tremor of fear ripple through the council members. The Velians had never known war. Their species had evolved on a world of gentle breezes and soft light, where the heaviest rainstorm felt like a whisper against their crystalline skin. Violence was not in their nature. They had no weapons, no warriors, no concept of organized killing. "There is one option remaining," said arch-historian Kelman, his ancient form barely holding its shape. He activated a holographic display and an object appeared above the council table. It looked like a perfect sphere, covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. "We discovered this in the ruins of the predecessor civilization, buried 3 kilometers beneath the southern continent." "The beacon," Mirseth whispered. "You said it was too dangerous." "I said we should never use it unless we faced absolute extinction," Kelman corrected. "We are now facing absolute extinction." The hologram shifted, showing the translation of symbols carved into the chamber where the beacon was found. The words had haunted Kelman for 30 cycles since the discovery. "Use only in absolute desperation. They will answer, but nothing will be the same." "Who are they?" asked another council member. "We do not know," Kelman admitted. "The predecessors left no other information. Only this warning and this device." Thelvan studied the beacon carefully. His role as ambassador to the galactic community had taught him to read between the lines of diplomatic language. This warning was not meant to discourage use. It was meant to prepare whoever activated it for a fundamental change in their reality. "The Kreth swarm has consumed 47 worlds in the past cycle," Thelvan said quietly. "They do not negotiate. They do not stop. They consume everything and move on. If we do nothing, our people will be extinct in less than 100 hours. The council chamber fell silent again. Outside, Velian children played in the gardens, their laughter like the sound of wind chimes. Parents tended to the crystal gardens that provided their nourishment. Artists shaped light into temporary sculptures that would fade with the sunset. All of it would end when the Kreth arrived. "We vote," Mirseth declared. "All in favor of activating the predecessor beacon?" Thelvan raised his hand. One by one, every council member did the same. Even those who had opposed the idea just days before now saw no other path forward. "Then it is decided," the High Chancellor said. "Kelman, prepare the beacon for activation." The next 18 hours passed in a blur of preparation. The beacon was brought to the surface and placed atop the highest tower in the capital city. Scientists and historians worked together to decipher the activation sequence. The Velian people were told that a final attempt at salvation was being made, though the government did not explain the nature of that attempt. Thelvan stood beside the beacon as the sun set on what might be their last peaceful day. Kelman approached, his form flickering with age and stress. "I translated another section of the chamber inscriptions," the historian said. "It was hidden deeper in a wavelength our equipment initially missed." "What did it say?" "It said we called them in our darkest hour. They saved us from the consuming dark, but we could never look at the universe the same way afterward. They showed us what survival truly costs." "That does not sound reassuring," Thelvan observed. "No," Kelman agreed. "But we are out of reassuring options." At precisely the calculated moment, Kelman initiated the activation sequence. The beacon began to pulse with light that existed in spectrums the Velians had never seen before. It rose into the air, floating above the tower, and then it screamed. The sound was not audible in the traditional sense. It bypassed ears entirely and resonated directly in the mind. Every Velian on the planet felt it simultaneously. A call that traveled faster than light itself, piercing through the fabric of space and reaching outward into the void. Then it stopped. The beacon fell silent and dark, its power completely spent. "Did it work?" someone asked. "We will know soon enough," Kelman replied. The Kreth arrived on schedule. Their bioships entered the system like a plague, organic vessels grown rather than built. Pulsing with sickly bioluminescence, they moved with purpose toward Velia Prime, deploying smaller craft that would begin the consumption process. The Valian people watched in horror as their sensors tracked the approaching swarm. Some prayed to old gods. Some held their families close. Some simply watched the sky and waited for the end. 3 days after the beacon's activation, the sensors detected something new. High Chancellor, the sensor technician's voice cracked with confusion. We have massive energy signatures dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Multiple contacts. Very large contacts. The Council rushed to the observation deck. In the darkness of space, reality seemed to tear open. Flashes of light appeared, and through them came ships. But these were not like any vessels the Velians had encountered. They were angular and aggressive, covered in armor plating and bristling with weapons. While Galactic Community ships were designed for efficiency and beauty, these ships were designed for one purpose only: war. How many? Mirseth asked. 37 capital ships, 112 smaller craft. They are arranging themselves in a defensive formation around our planet. Are they protecting us? Before anyone could answer, a communication signal arrived. The translation matrix struggled for a moment, then locked onto a reference language from the Galactic database. A face appeared on the screen. The Velians recoiled instinctively. The being had bilateral symmetry, which was common enough, but everything else about it screamed danger. 2 forward-facing eyes designed for tracking prey. A mouth full of flat grinding teeth in front and pointed tearing teeth in back. Skin that was thick and dense, covering a body built with redundant systems and heavy musculature adapted for high gravity. Most disturbing were the eyes. They held intelligence, certainly, but also something the Velians had never seen in a sapient species. The eyes of a predator. "This is Admiral Kendra Wu of the United Earth Space Navy, Task Force Terra," the being said. Its voice was powerful, coming from lungs designed to function in dense atmosphere. "We received your distress call. We are here to help." Thelvan stepped forward, trying to control the instinctive fear response. "We are grateful for your response, Admiral. We are the Velian Collective. Our world is under attack by the Kreth swarm." The Admiral's expression changed. Her lips pulled back slightly, revealing those predatory teeth. Thelvan would later learn this was called a smile. But in that moment it looked like a threat display. "The Kreth swarm," Admiral Wu repeated. "We are familiar with their methods. Don't worry, we will handle this." The communication ended, leaving the Council in stunned silence. "What have we done?" someone whispered. Thelvan looked at the warships holding position around their planet. Ships from a species that had somehow evolved on a world hostile enough to produce beings that looked like that. Ships crewed by creatures with the eyes of hunters. "We called for help," he said quietly, and Deathworlders answered. The human shuttle descended toward the capital city with what Thelvan considered reckless speed. It pulled up at the last moment, landing with a precision that suggested the pilot found the maneuver routine rather than dangerous. The ambassador steadied himself and prepared to meet their saviors face to face. Admiral Wu emerged first, and Thelvan immediately understood why the Galactic Community had no records of humans. They would have been classified as a prohibited species, too dangerous for contact. She moved with the casual confidence of an apex predator, her heavy footfalls making the delicate Velian platform flex slightly. 2 other humans accompanied her. One wore military insignia, the other appeared to be a scientist or diplomat. Both had that same unsettling forward-facing gaze. "Ambassador Thelvan," Admiral Wu said, extending her hand in what the briefing materials had explained was a human greeting. "Thank you for meeting with us." Thelvan carefully touched her hand, trying not to flinch at the crushing gravity that must have forged such dense bone structure. "Thank you for responding to our call, Admiral. We are desperate." "We could tell," said the human scientist, introducing herself as Dr. Sarah Chen. "Your distress signal was quite clear. The Kreth swarm has been a problem in this sector for some time. We have been tracking their movements." "You know about the Kreth?" Thelvan felt a flutter of hope. "Then you understand the threat we face?" The military officer, Commander James Martinez, pulled up a holographic display. "We have encountered them before. Their tactics are predictable. Overwhelming force, biological weapons, consumption of all organic and mineral resources. They rely on fear and superior numbers. They have already destroyed our defense satellites," Thelvan explained. "We have no military capability. Our entire civilization is built on peaceful cooperation. We have never fought a war." The 3 humans exchanged glances. Admiral Wu spoke carefully. we need to explain something about humanity. Our homeworld, Earth, is classified as a Class 12 death world by galactic community standards. I do not know what that means, Thelvan admitted. Dr. Chen pulled up an image of Earth. It was a beautiful world, covered in blue water and swirling white clouds. But as she zoomed in, Thelvan felt his crystalline structure go cold. Our planet has gravity approximately 3 times what you experience here, Dr. Chen explained. Our atmosphere is 21% oxygen, which is highly corrosive to most biological systems. Our temperature ranges would be lethal to most spacefaring species, and our biosphere is filled with organisms that have evolved to be extremely efficient at killing. Your world is trying to kill you? Thelvan asked, horrified. Constantly, Commander Martinez said with what Thelvan was learning to recognize as human humor. But that is why we are effective in combat situations. We evolved in an environment where everything was a threat. It made us very good at surviving threats. Admiral Wu leaned forward. What we need you to understand, Ambassador, is that humans are not like the Velians. We are not peaceful by nature. We have to choose peace, and we do choose it when we can. But when faced with a threat like the Kreth, we know how to respond. Over the next several hours, the humans requested detailed information about the Kreth forces, the planetary defenses, and the Velian population distribution. Thelvan provided everything they asked for, though he struggled to understand their tactical discussions. Terms like kill zones, flanking maneuvers, and acceptable losses were foreign to his peaceful species. At one point, Admiral Wu reviewed the Kreth force composition and frowned. This is the emergency? Ambassador, we were expecting something more substantial. More substantial? Thelvan felt his form flicker with stress. They have 73 bioships and thousands of smaller craft. They have never been defeated. Commander Martinez looked up from his tactical display. Ma'am, this is maybe a level 4 threat by our assessment. We could handle this with 1 carrier group, but we brought 3, Admiral Wu noted. Good, it will be quick. Thelvan could not comprehend their confidence. The Kreth have destroyed 47 civilizations. They are relentless. So are we, Admiral Wu said simply. The difference is that we are better at it. The Admiral invited Thelvan to tour the human flagship, a massive vessel called the UEN's Indomitable. The experience was disturbing on every level. The interior corridors were lit with harsh bright lights that would have been uncomfortable to most species. The gravity was crushing, forcing Thelvan to use a special harness just to move without damaging himself. And everywhere he looked, he saw evidence of humanity's violent nature. In the armory, he watched weapons being prepared. Projectile weapons that used explosive force to hurl metal at supersonic speeds. Energy weapons that could cut through ship hulls. And worse, melee weapons, blades and clubs designed for close combat. The humans expected to fight hand to hand. In the medical bay, he learned about human redundancy. They had backup systems for critical functions. If one kidney failed, they had another. Their blood could clot to seal wounds. Their bones could heal themselves. They were designed by evolution to take damage and keep functioning. But the most disturbing moment came when he passed by the ship's gymnasium. Through the window, he watched human soldiers exercising. They were lifting metal weights that would have crushed Velian bodies. They ran on machines at speeds that would shatter Velian legs. 2 soldiers were sparring in a combat ring, striking each other with blows that would kill most sapient beings, then laughing and congratulating each other afterward. That is recreation for them, Thelvan whispered to his guide, Lieutenant Chen. Physical fitness is important in our military, she explained. We need to stay in fighting condition. Plus, it helps with stress relief. They find violence relaxing? Controlled violence, yes. It helps us manage our aggression in healthy ways. She noticed his expression. I know it looks brutal, Ambassador, but you need to understand something about humans. We carry violence in our genes. Every human alive is descended from survivors of the most hostile environment imaginable. But we have learned to channel that violence. We protect instead of prey. We defend instead of attack first. The Kreth swarm is about to learn what happens when they threaten someone under human protection. That evening, as Thelvan prepared his report for the High Council, he struggled to find the right words. How could he explain what he had witnessed? The humans were terrifying. They were built for violence in ways that violated everything the Velians believed about civilized species. But they were also here. When the galactic community had ignored Velia's pleas, when every ally had abandoned them, when extinction seemed certain. These Deathworlders had crossed the void to stand between the Velians and annihilation. His report was interrupted by an alert. The Kreth swarm had detected the human fleet and responded with a message. The Kreth communication was simple: submit to consumption or be destroyed. It was the same message they sent to every species they encountered. Most surrendered immediately, hoping for mercy that never came. The human response came from Admiral Wu herself. Thelvan listened to the transmission, broadcast on all frequencies so both the Kreth and the Valians could hear. This is Admiral Kendra Wu of the United Earth Space Navy. The Velian Collective is under human protection. You have 1 hour to leave this system. If you remain, we will consider it an act of war. And trust me, you do not want to go to war with humanity. The Kreth response was predictable. Threats, promises of consumption, descriptions of what they would do to the human fleet. Admiral Wu's response was a single word: no. Then she gave the order Thelvan had been dreading and hoping for in equal measure. All ships, battle stations. Let's show them why you don't threaten a Deathworlder's friends. The human fleet moved into attack formation, and Thelvan realized that the Kreth swarm had made a terrible mistake. They had issued a threat to a species that had evolved by being more dangerous than everything else on their planet. Now the hunters were going to war. The battle began in the asteroid belt, far enough from Velia Prime to protect the civilian population, but close enough for the Velian sensors to track every moment. Thelvan stood in the observation center aboard the Indomitable, watching something his peaceful species had never witnessed before. Total war. The Kreth bioships moved in their standard formation, a swarm pattern designed to overwhelm enemy defenses through sheer numbers. It had worked on 47 worlds. Against the humans, it lasted exactly 4 minutes. Enemy vessels approaching at attack speed, announced the tactical officer, a calm-voiced woman named Lieutenant Park. Launching bioprojectiles. Point defense, engage, Commander Martinez ordered. Fighter wings, you are clear to launch. Through the view screen, Thelvan watched the human response. Smaller craft poured from the carriers, moving at speeds that seemed impossible. The Kreth bioprojectiles, living weapons designed to pierce ship hulls and consume them from within, were destroyed by rapid-fire weapons before they could make contact. Fighters engaging enemy swarm craft, Lieutenant Park reported. What happened next would haunt Thelvan's dreams for cycles to come. The human pilots flew like they were dancing with death itself, weaving through the asteroid field at velocities that should have been suicidal. They used the asteroids as cover, as weapons, as launching points for attacks that came from impossible angles. A Kreth swarm craft exploded, then another, then 5 more in rapid succession. Sir, the enemy is attempting to flank us from Grid 7, Lieutenant Park said. Let them, Admiral Wu replied. Martinez, execute Maneuver Delta 7. Thelvan watched in confusion as a section of the human fleet appeared to break formation, creating a gap in their defenses. The Kreth, recognizing an opportunity, poured ships into the opening. Then the trap closed. Human ships that had seemed out of position suddenly fired from multiple directions, creating a crossfire that tore through the Kreth vessels. It was not luck or accident. The humans had deliberately created a vulnerability to lure the enemy into a kill zone. They are using tactics, Thelvan breathed. They are thinking like predators. That is exactly what they are doing, said Dr. Chen, who had remained on the bridge for the engagement. Humans are persistence predators, Ambassador. We evolve by being smarter than our prey, by planning ahead, by working together. What you are watching is not just military training. This is evolutionary advantage. The battle intensified. A Kreth bioship, larger than the others, broke through the fighter screen and headed directly for the Indomitable. Its surface rippled with weapons ports, biological cannons that could tear through standard ship armor. Brace for impact, Commander Martinez called out. The Kreth ship fired. Thelvan felt the Indomitable shudder as the bioweapons struck the hull. Alarms sounded. Damage reports flooded in. Hull breach on decks 7 and 9, Lieutenant Park reported. Kreth boarding organisms detected. They are inside the ship? Thelvan felt panic rising. The Kreth excelled at close-quarters combat. Their biology allowed them to survive in vacuum, gave them multiple limbs for grappling, and their acidic blood made them dangerous even in death. Admiral Wu stood calmly. Martinez, dispatch Marine units to repel boarders. Dr. Chen, please escort Ambassador Thelvan to a secure location. I would prefer to remain and observe, Thelvan said. though his form flickered with fear. Admiral Wu studied him for a moment, then nodded. Very well, but stay behind the Marine units. What you are about to see will not be pleasant. The Marine response team arrived within minutes, 20 humans in powered armor carrying weapons that looked designed to fight in close quarters. They moved with practiced efficiency toward the breach point, and Thelvan followed at a safe distance with Dr. Chen. The corridor where the Kreth had breached was a nightmare. The biological invaders had already begun consuming the ship's infrastructure, their bodies merging with the walls as they spread. There were at least 40 of them, creatures designed for killing with multiple arms ending in razor-sharp claws. The Marines did not hesitate. They advanced into the breach with weapons firing, controlled bursts that tore through Kreth bodies. When the aliens closed to melee range, the humans switched tactics without missing a beat. They used their armor's enhanced strength, the butts of their rifles, combat knives, even their armored fists. Thelvan watched in horrified awe as a Marine grappled with a Kreth warrior, being struck multiple times by the alien's claws. The attacks that would have killed most beings just dented the human's armor. The Marine drove his combat knife up through the Kreth's primary neural cluster, then pushed the dying alien aside and continued advancing. Are they injured? Thelvan asked, watching the Marines press forward despite taking hits. Probably, Dr. Chen said calmly, but they are operating on adrenaline now. It is a chemical our bodies produce in danger. It increases strength, dulls pain, sharpens reflexes. They will feel the injuries later. The Kreth, realizing they were losing, attempted to retreat back through the breach. The Marines did not let them. No mercy for boarders, the squad leader growled over the comm system. This is our home. They do not get to leave. 7 minutes after the breach began, it was over. All 40 Kreth were dead. 3 Marines were injured, but all were walking and ready to continue fighting. Breach sealed, the squad leader reported. Hull integrity restored. Ready for further orders. Return to ready stations, Commander Martinez responded. Good work, Marines. As if the boarding action had been a minor interruption, the space battle continued. The Kreth, having lost their advantage in numbers, attempted a new strategy. They began to ram human ships using their biovessels as weapons themselves. The humans adapted instantly. All ships switch to formation, Charlie, Admiral Wu ordered. If they want to play chicken, let's show them how it's done. Thelvan learned a new term that day, ramming speed. The humans accelerated directly toward the incoming Kreth ships, firing all weapons. At the last possible moment, the human vessels broke away, letting their momentum carry them past the Kreth while their weapons carved through the bioships. It was madness. It was beautiful. It was the most terrifying display of calculated violence Thelvan had ever witnessed. The Kreth swarm intelligence, a collective consciousness spread across all their ships, finally recognized what was happening. They were not facing prey. They were facing something worse. They were facing a species that had been prey once, long ago, and had evolved until nothing on their world could hunt them anymore. The Kreth attempted to withdraw, to regroup, and develop new tactics. The humans did not allow it. Pursuit course, Admiral Wu ordered. I want every Kreth ship in this system accounted for. They came here to consume. They do not get to leave and try again later. The human fleet pursued the Kreth through the asteroid belt, hunting them with the same persistence their ancestors had used to hunt across African plains. Every time the Kreth tried to regroup, the humans broke their formation. Every time they tried to flee, the humans cut off their escape. It took 6 hours. When it was over, the Kreth swarm's military presence in the system was destroyed. 73 bioships reduced to debris. Thousands of smaller craft turned into expanding clouds of biological matter. The human fleet had lost 12 fighter craft and suffered damage to 3 capital ships. No human vessels were destroyed. Their casualty count was 19 dead, 37 wounded. By Kreth standards, by the standards of any military force in the galactic community, it should have been impossible. The humans had won a decisive victory against superior numbers with minimal losses. Thelvan stood on the bridge, his crystalline form trembling with emotions he had no words for. Relief, gratitude, and a deep, primal fear of what humanity represented. Admiral Wu noticed his state and approached carefully. Ambassador, are you all right? You destroyed them, Thelvan said quietly. You barely hesitated. You just destroyed them. They came to destroy your people, Admiral Wu said simply. They chose violence. We responded with greater violence. That is how predators survive, Ambassador. We are better at being dangerous than they are. I do not understand how your species can be so violent and yet you came to help us. You risk your lives for people you just met. Admiral Wu smiled, that expression that still looked like a threat display to Thelvan. That is the other thing about humans, Ambassador. We are pack animals. Once we decide someone is under our protection, we fight for them like they are family. The Valians called for help. That made you part of our pack. Before Thelvan could respond, Lieutenant Park interrupted. Admiral, we have a problem. Long-range sensors show Kreth biological signatures on the surface of Velia Prime. They deployed invasion organisms before we arrived. The relief Thelvan had felt evaporated. The surface? Our people? How many? Admiral Wu demanded. Estimate several thousand organisms spread across 3 continents. They are already beginning to consume. Admiral Wu turned to Commander Martinez. Prepare ground teams for immediate deployment. Full combat load. We are going hunting. Thelvan looked at the Admiral in shock. You will go to the surface yourselves? Of course, Admiral Wu said, as if it was obvious. This is not over until every Kreth organism is dead and your people are safe. That is what Deathworlders do, Ambassador. We finish what we start. The dropship descended through Velia Prime's atmosphere with Thelvan strapped into a specially modified seat. Around him, 20 human Marines checked their weapons and armor with practiced efficiency. They were heading into the northern continent, where Kreth organisms had established the largest infestation. 2 minutes to landing zone, the pilot announced. Terrain is rocky with limited vegetation. Multiple hostiles confirmed in the area. Sergeant First Class Marcus Webb, the squad leader, looked over at Thelvan. You sure you want to come along, Ambassador? This is going to get rough. I must see this, Thelvan replied. My people need to understand what you are doing for us. I need to witness it myself. Webb nodded with what might have been respect. Stay behind the line and do exactly what we tell you. If things go bad, Dr. Chen will get you to the evac point. Understood? Understood. The dropship landed hard, its armored hull designed to survive combat insertions rather than provide a smooth ride. The rear ramp dropped and the Marines moved out in a coordinated formation that Thelvan was learning to recognize as standard human military procedure. The landscape was one Thelvan knew well. Crystalline outcroppings that his people cultivated for resources, gardens of light-reactive plants, and in the distance, a small Velian settlement. Or what used to be a settlement. The Kreth had been busy. The buildings were being consumed, their structures broken down into base materials. Velian bodies lay scattered, their crystalline forms shattered. But worse were the survivors, trapped in organic cocoons as the Kreth slowly processed them for nutrients. Multiple hostiles. 300 meters, reported Corporal Sarah Chen. No relation to Dr. Chen. She knelt behind a rock formation, her weapon steady. Count as approximately 40 organisms. They have civilians cocooned. Rules of engagement are weapons-free, Webb said. But watch your backdrop. We have friendlies trapped in there. The squad advanced, and Thelvan followed with Dr. Chen close beside him. The terrain that Velians found challenging to cross, the humans navigated with ease. Their heavy world musculature made the gravity almost trivial for them. They moved quickly and quietly, using cover with an instinct that spoke to their predator heritage. The Kreth detected them at 100 meters and charged. What happened next would become a teaching moment in every Velian school for generations. The humans did not panic. They did not flee. They set up overlapping fields of fire and began systematically eliminating targets with precision that seemed impossible. A Kreth warrior, massive and covered in bioarmor, charged directly at Corporal Chen's position. She fired controlled bursts at its joints, the weak points in its carapace, and when it got within 10 meters, she calmly drew a sidearm and put 3 rounds through its neural cluster. Reloading, she called out, dropping behind cover. Covering, responded another Marine, stepping up to maintain fire. The Kreth organisms, designed to overwhelm through savagery and numbers, found themselves fighting an enemy that operated with cold, calculated efficiency. Every human move was purposeful. Every shot was aimed. They wasted nothing, not ammunition, not movement, not effort. Webb, we have civilians trapped in that structure. Lieutenant James Park reported. Kreth are using them as shields. Chen Rodriguez with me, Webb ordered. Close assault. The rest of you keep the pressure on. Thelvan watched as 3 Marines broke from the main group and approached the structure where Velians were trapped. The Kreth, recognizing the tactic, sent warriors to intercept. The humans switched to close combat without hesitation. Their armor absorbed blows that would have been lethal. Their training turned their entire bodies into weapons. Rodriguez caught a Kreth's claw arm, twisted, and used the alien's own momentum to slam it into a wall. Chen's combat knife found weak points with surgical precision. Webb fought with a combination of weapon and armor, using every advantage his Deathworld evolution provided. It was brutal. It was effective. And it was done with a purpose that Thelvan was beginning to understand. Every risk the humans took was calculated to save Velian lives. The fight should have been chaos. But the humans moved like a single organism, each one covering the others, communicating constantly, adapting to every change in the situation. This was not random violence. This was the result of millions of years of evolution that had created a species of cooperative hunters. Civilians secure, Webb reported. Chen, get them to the evac point. Corporal Chen pulled the Velians from their cocoons with surprising gentleness, given that moments before she had been fighting for her life. She spoke to them in their own language, poorly but understandably, reassuring them that they were safe now. Can you walk? She asked an elderly Velian. I think so, the Velian replied, her form flickering with shock. Good, stay close to me. We're getting you out of here. As Chen escorted the civilians back to the dropship, another group of Kreth appeared from a canyon to the north. These were different from the warriors. They were larger, with specialized biological weapons growing from their carapaces. Contact north, someone shouted. Heavy bioforms, one of the creatures fired, a stream of acid that hit Private Jackson square in the chest. His armor smoking, Jackson went down hard. Thelvan felt horror surge through him. The human was surely dead, but Jackson moved. Slowly, struggling against pain that must have been incredible, he rolled to cover and began returning fire. Jackson's hit. Rodriguez called. I'm fine. Jackson growled through gritted teeth, though his voice said otherwise. Just pissed off now. That's the spirit, Webb said. Park Rodriguez suppressed those heavy forms. Chen just called in for close air support. Copy that, Park replied. Marking targets now. Thelvan turned to Dr. Chen. Your soldier was struck by acid. He should be dead or incapacitated. Why is he still fighting? Adrenaline, Dr. Chen explained. And stubbornness. Humans can ignore pain when necessary, especially when their squad is in danger. Jackson knows his team needs him, so his body is suppressing the pain response. He will pay for it later, but right now he is running on pure determination. That should not be possible. On most worlds it is not, but Earth taught us to keep fighting even when injured. The humans that survived were the ones who could take damage and keep going. Jackson is injured, yes, but not dead. And not dead means still dangerous. The air support arrived in the form of 2 human gunships, sleek aircraft that moved with impossible agility. They strafed the heavy Kreth bioforms with weapons that seemed excessive for the task. But Thelvan was learning that humans did not believe in fair fights. They believed in overwhelming force applied precisely where needed. The battle continued for another 2 hours. The Marines cleared 3 more settlements, rescuing hundreds of Velians and eliminating every Kreth organism they encountered. They did it while carrying wounded, while running low on ammunition, while exhausted from the thin atmosphere that their high-oxygen biology struggled with. And through it all, they never complained. They just kept moving forward, kept fighting, kept saving lives. As the sun set on Velia Prime, Thelvan stood on a ridge overlooking the valley they had cleared. Below, rescued Velians were being loaded onto transport ships. Human medics were treating the injured, both human and Velian, with the same care and attention. Sergeant Webb approached, his armor scarred and dented from the day's fighting. Ambassador, we are moving to the next sector at first light. You should return to the command ship and rest. I need to ask you something, Thelvan said. Why? Why do you risk everything for people you do not know? Your Private Jackson may lose his arm from that acid exposure. Corporal Chen was injured saving those civilians. You have already lost soldiers in this campaign. Why? Webb was quiet for a long moment, looking out over the valley. You know what the worst thing about being from a death world is, Ambassador? Growing up, we learn early that the universe is dangerous, that death is always close, that if you are not strong, you do not survive, and that sounds terrible. It is. But it teaches us something important. It teaches us that strength without purpose is just cruelty. We are strong because Earth made us strong. We are dangerous because Earth made us dangerous. But we get to choose what we do with that strength. We can be predators or we can be protectors. Humanity chose to be protectors. Webb turned to face Thelvan directly. Private Jackson will lose his arm. Corporal Chen has 3 broken ribs. We have lost 19 soldiers in this campaign, and every single one of them volunteered for this mission knowing the risks. You want to know why? Because when we heard your distress call, we heard people in trouble, and humans do not leave people in trouble. That is what makes us human, not the violence. The choice to use our strength to protect instead of prey. Before Thelvan could respond, an urgent communication came through. Commander Martinez's voice was tight with tension. All units, priority alert. The Kreth Queen ship is still in system. Long-range sensors show it powering up a biological weapon. If it activates, the entire planet will be sterilized. We have less than 48 hours. Thelvan felt his form go cold. After everything, after the battles won and the lives saved, it could still end in extinction. What do we do? He whispered. Webb's expression hardened. We finish this. No matter what it takes. The briefing room aboard the Indomitable was packed with officers, Marines, and technical specialists. Admiral Wu stood at the head of the table, a holographic display showing the Kreth Queen ship hovering before her. The massive biovessel pulsed with sickly light, hidden in the outer system where it had retreated after the fleet battle. The weapon is biological in nature, Dr. Chen explained, pointing to the ship's core. When activated, it will release spores into the atmosphere that will break down all organic and silicon-based matter. Everything on Velia Prime will be reduced to base elements within 72 hours of exposure. Can we destroy the ship from range? Commander Martinez asked. Not quickly enough, Lieutenant Park replied. The Queen ship has heavy bioarmor. By the time our weapons penetrate to the core, the weapon will have activated. We need to disable it from the inside. Silence fell over the room. Everyone understood what that meant. A boarding action, against a ship designed to be a death trap for intruders, against a Kreth Queen, the most dangerous organism in their species. Admiral Wu looked around the room. I need volunteers for a boarding mission. I will not lie to you. The odds of survival are minimal. This is a one-way trip for most, if not all, of the team. Thelvan watched in amazement as every human in the room stepped forward. Officers, enlisted personnel, medical staff, even the ship's cooks. 300 humans volunteering to die so that his people might live. Sir, I volunteer, said Sergeant Webb. I volunteer, said Corporal Chen, her ribs still bandaged from the previous day's fighting. I volunteer, said Private Jackson, his acid-damaged arm in a regeneration sleeve. One by one they spoke. One by one they offered their lives. Admiral Wu's expression remained controlled, but Thelvan could see the emotion beneath it. Pride, sorrow, the terrible weight of command that came with accepting such sacrifices. Thank you, Admiral Wu said quietly. Martinez, select a strike team of 100. Prioritize close combat specialists and demolitions experts. We have 36 hours to plan this operation. Let's make them count. As the briefing ended and personnel dispersed to prepare, Thelvan approached Admiral Wu. I wish to go with the boarding team. The Admiral turned to him in surprise. Ambassador, that is not possible. Your physiology cannot survive the environment inside a Kreth ship. The gravity alone would crush you. I have something you need, Thelvan insisted. He pulled up a data file on his personal device. This is access to a Velian quantum computer, a relic from the predecessor civilization. It can process biological systems and interface with technology we barely understand. If your team can get me to the weapons control center, I can shut it down. Dr. Chen studied the data. He is right, Admiral. This could work. If we can access the weapon's biological interface, this quantum system could hack it faster than anything we have. But the physical stress... I will not survive the mission, Thelvan said simply. I understand this. But if my death means my people live, then it is a death with purpose. Is that not what you said? Using strength to protect instead of prey? Let me be strong, Admiral. Let me choose to be strong. Admiral Wu studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Very well, Ambassador. Welcome to the strike team. The next 30 hours passed in preparation that felt both too fast and too slow. The human Marines practiced breaching techniques, studied the limited intelligence on Kreth Queen ship layouts, and said quiet goodbyes to friends and loved ones. Thelvan spent the time with Dr. Chen, who helped him prepare a specialized suit that would keep him alive in the hostile environment, at least temporarily. She also taught him to use a human sidearm, though they both knew he would never have the strength to survive real combat. "Why do you do this?" Thelvan asked as she adjusted his suit's gravity compensators. "You are a scientist, not a soldier. Yet you volunteer for a suicide mission." Dr. Chen smiled sadly. "Because I am human, Ambassador. We are all soldiers when we need to be. That is the price and privilege of being from Earth. We know what it means to fight for survival, so we fight for others' survival too." The boarding craft launched on schedule, 3 dropships filled with humanity's finest warriors, and 1 fragile Velian ambassador who had learned what courage truly meant. They approached the Queen ship from its blind spot, moving silently through space. 30 seconds to breach, the pilot announced. The ships latched onto the Queen ship's hull, and cutting torches began burning through the bioarmor. Thelvan felt his suit's systems strain as they entered an environment designed for Kreth biology. High heat, toxic atmosphere, gravity that pulled at him like a weight. "Move, move," Sergeant Webb shouted as the breach opened. The Marines poured through into a nightmare of organic corridors and pulsing walls. Kreth warriors responded immediately, pouring from side passages in a frenzy of claws and acid. The humans met them with controlled fury. Weapons fire lit the corridor. Kreth bodies fell. Human Marines moved forward unstoppable, each one covering the others in a dance of violence that Thelvan had come to recognize as uniquely human. "Left corridor clear. Right corridor, 3 hostiles down. Keep moving. We are on the clock." The strike team fought their way deeper into the ship. Every meter cost them. Private Jackson fell overwhelmed by Kreth warriors, his last act throwing a grenade that cleared the path for his squad. Lieutenant Park took a claw through the chest but managed to seal a bulkhead behind the team, cutting off Kreth reinforcements. They died, these humans. They died buying meters of ground, buying seconds of time, buying a chance for the mission to succeed. Thelvan's suit alarm screamed as his life support struggled against the environment. Dr. Chen stayed close, helping him move, protecting him with her own body when Kreth attacked. "Almost there," she said, her voice tight with pain from injuries she had not mentioned. "Just a little further, Ambassador." The weapon control chamber was a cathedral of organic technology, pulsing with bioluminescence. And at its center, the Kreth Queen, massive and terrible, aware of the intruders. She spoke in a voice that resonated in their minds. "You fight for creatures not of your kind. You die for beings you barely know. This is weakness." Admiral Wu, bloodied but unbowed, raised her weapon. "No, this is humanity." The final battle was chaos. The Queen's guards, elite warriors bred for her protection, fell on the strike team. Corporal Chen went down fighting 3 at once. Commander Martinez detonated his remaining explosives to collapse a corridor and cut off reinforcements. Sergeant Webb stood over Thelvan's position, refusing to yield ground even as wounds accumulated. And through it all, Thelvan worked. His fragile fingers manipulated the quantum computer interface, his mind racing to decode the weapon's biological systems. The Kreth technology resisted, adapted, but the predecessor quantum computer was beyond anything they had encountered. "I have access," Thelvan announced. "Beginning shutdown sequence," the Queen screamed, a sound of rage and disbelief. She surged toward Thelvan, intent on stopping him. Admiral Wu stepped into her path. "You want him?" the Admiral said. "You go through me first." They fought, the Kreth Queen and the human Admiral, an impossible match between a creature designed by evolution to dominate and a human who refused to yield. Admiral Wu could not win, but she did not need to win. She just needed to buy time. 30 seconds, Thelvan called out. The Queen's claw pierced Admiral Wu's armor. The Admiral drove her combat knife into the Queen's neural cluster. Both fell. 15 seconds. A figure emerged from the corridor they had thought cleared. A Kreth warrior, heading straight for Thelvan. Sergeant Webb, his armor shattered and his body failing, threw himself at the warrior. They went down together in a tangle of desperate combat. 5 seconds. The weapon control systems flickered, pulsed, and went dark. The shutdown was complete. The planet below was saved. Thelvan's suit failed. The gravity began crushing him. Dr. Chen appeared, scooping him up despite her own wounds. "We need emergency evac at the control chamber," she shouted into her comm. Admiral Wu stirred, somehow still alive despite injuries that should have killed her. "The ship is collapsing," she said weakly. "Everyone out. Now." The survivors, less than 20 from the 100 who had boarded, fled through corridors that were falling apart around them. The Queen ship, its control center destroyed, began a catastrophic biological failure. They made it to the breach point with seconds to spare. Hands pulled them aboard the dropships. The pilots launched immediately, racing away from the dying ship. Behind them, the Kreth Queen ship imploded in a burst of biological matter and failing technology. The threat was ended. On Velia Prime, the Valian people watched the sky light up with the Queen ship's death. They knew somehow that their salvation had come at a terrible cost. 2 weeks later, Thelvan stood in the memorial garden that his people had created. The gravity was Velian standard here, comfortable for his recovering form. Around him stood monuments, each bearing the name of a human who had died protecting a world that was not their own. Admiral Wu, her arm in a regeneration sleeve, stood beside him. She had survived against all odds, but of the 100 who had boarded the Queen ship, only 17 had returned. "We owe you everything," Thelvan said quietly. "How can we ever repay this debt?"